So, I'm going to start with something brief from the book. So this is by Vicky Cummings, who is our archaeology consultant who wrote the introduction for us. Dolmens are early Neolithic stone monuments where the main focus appears to have been the lifting up and display of a huge capstone. They were sometimes used for the deposition of the dead, but this does not seem to have been their primary function. Instead, the builders of these sites seem to have wanted to demonstrate their prowess of raising and supporting massive stones. These sites have capstones that are far in excess of the size required simply to create a stone box for burial. The largest dolmen, Browns Hill in County Carlow in Ireland, has a capstone that weighs over 100 tons. Most dolmens have their capstone supported by just 3 uprights. This creates an amazing effect, an enormous stone supported in almost floating in the sky. Because the stone chosen for the capstone was often a thick and chunky object, the effect of a massive stone lifted in the air is further enhanced, and this was almost certainly deliberate on the part of the builders. Likewise, the stones used to support the capstones are often thin and slender, with just the very smallest part touching the underside of the capstone. Again, this was surely deliberate, done to enhance the effect of lifting up a large stone. It's hard to imagine how people with only Stone Age technology were able to lift such massive stones. Visitors to these sites, of course, express amazement, and I think that's exactly what the builders intended. So just... Right, swap notes. So yes, looking at dolmens. Cornwall, this is from the Old Stones book. This is our map of Cornwall. And the bottom left, of course, is West Penwith. And they're better known as quoits down there, but they're effectively the same thing. So Lanyon Quoit is, of course, very well known. And then Pentraeth in Pembrokeshire, another fantastic site. But going back to Cornwall briefly, there's many different types of dolmens. This is one you may not have come across. It's in Lescanic Hill, which is a northern part of Bodmin Moor. And, well, it's almost not a dolmen, it's really a propped stone. And it's not certain that it was built as a man-made site, but if you look at it, it has propping and it has all the hallmarks of a dolmen, so I think this is part of the same tradition. And we get other propped stones as well. This is the Golden Stones in North Yorkshire. And what do you make of that? Well, there's a stone and it's got a prop, and it's not classically a dolmen. And I think what people were doing here, again, this was a show of skill and strength. So effectively, setting this up was really the whole point of doing it, I think. And a lot of people would probably have been involved, and you're looking at a performative art, if you get my drift, is the kind of thing you might see with the propped stones. And we have many more of these on the Megalithic portal. David Shepherd's been researching these. One of my first talks was down in Cornwall, and we looked at again Bodmin Moor. And you get this fascinating effect at Loudon Stone Circle and also at Stannon and Fernacre, where they're all in sight of Rowtor Mountain. And they all have these extraordinary tri-stones. And they all seem to reference the mountain as well, in that they're pointing towards them or on that side. And this seems to be more than a coincidence to me. And also another interesting point about these 3 stone circles is that they have this arrangement on the ground. They're about 2 kilometres, this is about 2 kilometres from side to side and 1 kilometre top to bottom. And Roy Goutet has proposed that this is an intentional triangle. I mean, it's a fantastic sacred landscape all over Bodmin Moor with many, many sites, of course. So when he also has been researching Lescanic Hill, as I mentioned. And this is Roy saying, when we arrived at Lescanic, felt we were in a special place, a place of wonder and great importance. To stand on top of Lescanic Hill, you can't help but feel you're in the centre of a world that was once a kingdom, an enclosed world with only a hint or speculation of a possible world beyond. So looking at Lescanic, there's two main stone circles, and this is one of them. Now Roy and his team have been clearing them over the past few years. You can see that they've essentially cleared around the stones, and they've uncovered many, many more of these stones. So they've actually found 27 stones. This is the southeastern stone circle. He's now uncovered 27 stones. And in the centre, this big one is potentially a kist burial, which I'll come on to similar things again later on. But potentially there's someone under there, so we need to raise it and find out one day. So, yes, Lescanic, fascinating site. And if another thing they uncovered while doing their not excavation, but just sort of restoration, is another tri-stone. So this is again on the side that references Rautor, and I think it's a very significant discovery. So megalithic portal, many of you will know, this is from a live map from the site, and I've had a look at sites around Glastonbury that you can visit. Now, Glastonbury's in the centre. We've of course got the Tor and the well and such like, but a bit further afield, over to the left, you've got the Quantock Hills here, and this is the Holford Longstone. Now, similar to Exmoor, there's quite a lot of very small stones over on the Quantocks, and you can see there's a large number of them there. And I think Hugh knows these, just to the north of Glastonbury. Now, I don't think these are prehistoric because they were in a hedge. They may just be boundary stones or boundary markers, but they're a lovely site to visit. So yes, Deer Leap Stone's just to the north, and Dundon Hill is, if you know that one, is just a few miles to the south of Glastonbury here, and there's an absolutely lovely barrow there with a little tiny person and a dog, just to give scale, and also Dundon Hill Fort down there. So a few sites. That's a pretty massive hill fort. And then, of course, near Glastonbury, there's the Lake Village, which is the museum in the Tribunal, which is just about to reopen, I think, in the next couple of weeks. And you can go in and see there's currently nothing to be seen of the Lake Village anymore, but you can go into the Glastonbury Museum. And then the Sweet Track, of course, is a Neolithic trackway, and many other trackways were found in the Somerset Levels near Glastonbury, as I say, just over to the left here. And that has been reconstructed in the last few years, and it's the Avalon Marshes Visitor Centre now, and they have tours, walks that you can go around over the marshes, and they've done these various reconstructions which are pretty nice. And then to the north of Glastonbury, there's pretty circles you probably know, and 9 stones, but I just highlighted Gorsey Bigbury Henge here, which is a really substantial site. 4,000 flint flakes have been found all over there, and also so you've probably heard about feasting in connection with Stonehenge that Julian will be talking about, but there seems to be evidence of feasting here as well. Let's get that. And so this is 1900 BC, so it's a classic sort of henge sort of period. And then over to the east, I'll just go back one, so up in the very corner there you've got Frome and the Stony Littleton Long Barrow, of course, which seems to be sliding down the hill slightly. It's really odd how it wasn't built on the top of the hill. But again, I'm sure many of you know this. Restored in Victorian times, it has a little Victorian plaque on it extolling the virtues of Victorian engineering, and of course the ammonite on the left, door jamb, which has to be significant. Giant thing, really. Little plan of the inside of the barrow, and again, this was Neolithic, and people were burying their dead, but they weren't just burying them, they were disarticulating the skeletons somewhere else and collecting the skeletons up and putting different bits of body part in different chambers, which is extremely strange. And we'll show a few more of those later on. Now, while I was in Frome, I had a look around some sites around there, and the Devil's Bed and Bolster is a fascinating little site. It's a double chamber, you can really only see 2 stones at each end and a little bit in the middle. But I'm sure you know, there's many stories of strange experiences and odd goings on at some of these sites. And on the Megalithic portal page for the Devil's Bed and Bolster, while I was looking this up, someone's left an anonymous, probably just as well anonymous comment. And they've said, "I live in Church Lane in Road," which is just down the road, "and I went to the Devil's Bed and Bolster. My bro put 666 on the bed, naughty bro. And 1 hour later, thunder and lightning happened. Never in my lifetime will I go there again." So the people still reporting this sort of thing. And had some strange goings on connected to Road, because I'd put the Devil's Bed and Bolster on when I went to Frome. And then Caroline invited me back to speak in Road a couple of months later, and I already had a site just nearby for her, which was very handy. And then I went up to the Mysterious Earth Conference in Preston, right way up there, and we were having a quick meal beforehand, and there was a chap sitting opposite the table who said he couldn't come to my talk the next day, which was a shame. So I said, "Well, where do you live?" And he said, "Oh, I live in Road." And so the next month I'm going to visit Road to give him a talk. So I've had a number of very strange coincidences around Road, which I think Peter Knight tells me is this road is at the centre of the Wessex Astrum and there's very interesting alignment. So it's a very strange experiences around Road. And then the other slightly strange coincidence is we have Julian Richards here today, who presented me with our award a couple of months ago. So I'll be looking forward to seeing Julian again. So more strange experiences. Well, it beats being on the Falkland Village Green stocks, which are again over in Somerset, or the other end of Somerset, near Frome. And this is referencing Maria Wheatley. This is one of her favourite activities if you've been on one of her tours. So Stanton Drew, again, another way to experience the stones. So people have reported tingling, as I'm sure you know, and being thrown in the air, and eyes watering, and strange electrical and camera malfunctions and that sort of thing. So always worth keeping a lookout. And of course, briefly on healing, well, you all know about Mennan Toll, so I don't need to tell you about that. The Tolvan stone is another similar hold stone in Helston area to the south of, or tip of Cornwall, and similar legends connected with that, with being passed through the hole for healing and curing of ailments and all that sort of thing. And we get these healing stones all over the world, as we have on the megalithic portal. And here's one from Czechoslovakia. Now this is the Chapel of the Holy Stone. It's a fairly normal looking chapel until you go through the door, and in this chapel we have a socking great cleaved stone, which has been well and truly Christianized, as you can see there. So we're looking at an active tradition here, and very revering this stone is very much a part of people's lives still. And you can see all the offerings on there. And then again, Peter Knight talks about solution holes in his book. We've got a solution hole, I think, here, which again has been given a double purpose as a nice little plant feature. So elsewhere in Europe, Liv Minazzi, which is a Tumor di Giganti on Sardinia. This actually has an information board which shows you where best to pick up the vibrations, which is the green section down the centre. So that's people do yoga there and such like as well. But again, it's a great to experience all these things at various sites. Quartz, of course, is an important factor. So Dulo and Dorstone Hill as well has a great scatter of quartz. This is over in Herefordshire. Now, there's no quartz naturally, and people have brought in loads of quartz and scattered it around the site, which it seems to be a very common occurrence from the megalith builders, but they were very interested in quartz. And Dulo here, well, this is a guardian figure, I think, if ever there was one. So other quartz sites, you've got Arthog stones and Pen Men Wern, which is on top of a mountain in mid Wales, or mid to South Wales, in Powys, I think it is. And this is an extraordinary solid lump of crystalline quartz, really. You can see a close-up there of the quartz. And when I look at that, it looks like there's a sort of animal trapped inside, if you look at the shape of that. It's an extraordinary shape. You see that. And other interesting ideas surrounding stones, these are all really ideas that people have invited people to write things in, to put in the book, and these are all various things that we've got in. We've got Penelope Foreman, who's done a PhD looking at colours of stones in various burial mounds and all over Europe, and she started in Bryn Cethley D in Anglesey, and this is a look at the inside, and these stones are all different colours, and she's mapped out the colours. She has a little electronic gadget that actually measures the colour of the stone, and she's actually looked at this scientifically as well as other things. And these stones were not brought from nearby. The nearby stone is a blue schist, which is in the pillar towards the back, but there were many stones brought from quite a long distance, and colours seem to be arranged. You've got sort of pairs of colours, and you also see that up at the Clava Cairns, where with coloured stones. So, quick look at the stones around Kent megaliths near Maidstone. So this is again a megalithic portal map. Maidstone's down there, and the groupings of stones up here, and Addington over there, and the other stones over here. So you've got Chestnuts, Longbarrow and Coldram to the left, and then Kit's Coty, which I'm sure most of you know. However, my favourite fascinating stone over here is the White Horse Stone, which has many legends connecting to it, not least of about a white horse, clearly. And it's also very close to the Channel Tunnel rail link, so it sadly has trains thundering past it these days. But I was looking, actually someone sent this to me last week on Twitter, is faces in the stone. Again, this is one of Terence Meaden things that you may have come across, but I've never come across it from the White Horse Stone. And we've got a modern, that's from this year, and this is from 1907, with these again, the chap from 1907 is again predating Terence Meaden, who's suggesting that there's augmentation and carving been done on this stone, and this is his little diagram where he thinks there are two heads. So see what you make of that. As I say, there was a lot of excavation done here for the Channel Tunnel rail link, and just close by to the White Horse Stone is this enormous great Neolithic Longhouse. And I think the scales at the top, it's about 10 metres wide and probably about 30 metres long. And this is a really socking great thing. So, and the other interesting thing is it's really early, so it's going back to, I think, 4000 BC, so 6,000 years ago. So this is older than the chambered tombs, older than West Kennet, older even than the Kent megaliths. So people were building this sort of timber monumental structure, really, and it's a gabled long building. And there's a very interesting parallel with long barrows, because this is another similar, on the left, a similar Neolithic house dating back to very early times. It was from Germany. And again, they come over to Britain with a similar style coming over, and the actual design is very similar to many long barrows. And of course, a long barrow is the business end of a long barrow is really just the front. So you've got this great long mound. So most of it is just showing off it's a monumental show off, really. And recently excavated cat's brain, where the suggestion from the archaeologists is that really this is a house as much as a long barrow, with a house found underneath it, and ideas of moving the dead in and out. If you think of these chambers with putting skulls and other bones, people were interacting with these things. So, I mean, as with a church having plaques and monuments in this does seem to be monuments that people were interacting with. So, quick skip over to Dartmoor. So, this is from the book, the map from Dartmoor, showing all the best sites to visit. And Down Tor is, I guess, can have a quick look at that one, which is over here. Now, Stone Row with an interesting sort of round cairn or cairn circle at the end. So this is some of these are up to 2 kilometres long, and there's really interesting ideas about why they put these cairn circles at the end. Are you capping off some spirits, or capping the end of the line, or I think there's more to these cairn circles at the end than meets the eye, really. And moving over to elsewhere in Dartmoor, Grey Weathers is a really lovely double stone circle, which is really worth visiting. And something else which some of our members do is, of course, dowsing. And Angie Lake, who lives in Devon, has come up with this really interesting, different way of dowsing for ritual movement, which is what she's done, or what she does is moves around the stones with her rods, and she's looking to pick up the original ritual paths that were laid out by the designers of the circle, and trying to pick up ideas of processional routes and of various different movements and such like, which there's quite a few other of these plans. If you want to have a look at these, they're in our gallery on the Megalithic portal. So as I say, if you want to try some different dowsing, you can, as I say, look for processional routes and try and pick something up from the ancestors. So I'm not going to cover this in great detail, because I think Julian Richards is doing the DNA such like, but very recently, you're probably familiar with the Beaker people and Beaker Revolution, and this idea of people coming over from Europe, being, whether it was pots or people coming over. But this is extraordinary DNA research that you can see from these people are Neolithic, and they're what's the word? They've always lived here, and the red DNA is an entirely different group of people who came over from the continent, and there's an incredible cut-off this is 4000 BC. These are all different people who from different tombs, such all over the country, who've had their DNA sampled by drilling into their heads. Fortunately, they're no longer with us, but you can get DNA from behind the ear bone in there, and remarkably, that due to modern technology, you can actually get this DNA and get learn a lot about where they came from, and their DNA and such like. And so from Neolithic times, we've got dates of all these burials, and plotting out the dates, these are all indigenous, as was the word I was looking for, indigenous people. And then the dates after the Bronze Age, or through into the Bronze Age, you get an entirely different DNA. But you do get a little tiny bit of the blue left, but really what this shows is people weren't not mixing very much, and they weren't breeding very much with each other. They were sort of keeping themselves to themselves. And also, it's not really very well understood why this happened. It could be people coming over en masse and taking over, or, as I say, it could be a plague which wiped out all the blue people. As I say, I think Julian's going to cover that in a bit more detail. But this is one of the burials from Achnavic in Scotland, which they have also, there's a separate Ava project going on, which has reconstructed her facial features. Now she's a Bronze Age beaker lady, so she's got really Mediterranean type features. Although this is, they didn't come from the Mediterranean; they came from sort of Germany and elsewhere, but kind of Mediterranean, fairly dark features. So over to Ireland. Now you're familiar with Newgrange, of course, but we've got other sites to look at, such as Cairo Keel, and this has got a very similar roof box to Newgrange, so only it's maybe it is earlier, so people were starting over to the west of Ireland and moving east down the river, and the monuments were getting more sophisticated as they went on. So this is it's a grave cemetery which you can explore, which are, as I say, these are built with large, it's cairns, piled up cairn material. So another one of my favourite sites from Ireland is Cleggan Court Tomb, right over to the west, which is similar to a dolmen, only quite a bit longer. But if you look at the other view, there's something going on here with the water connection looking right out to the Atlantic. So an amazing location, and you've got again sort of horned tomb going on. So someone else I've met on my travels is Gabriel Burns, who has really come up with some extraordinary ideas connected with stone megaliths on the Irish border, so fairly topical at the moment, sadly. So this is County Cavan and County Monaghan on either side of the border. And he's been researching these for 25 years. And there's a dolmen called the Giant's Tomb, the Giant's Leap, which is quite nearby to these. And what there is in the forest as you explore around is numerous of these boulders. And these have, they're propped, so we're coming back to this propping idea. And they do seem to have carvings on. So you've got this, phallic carving, I have to say. And this is also the prop. What seems to be going on here is the carving seems to be being faced towards a particular alignment. So some face towards the dolmen, and some have particular astronomical alignments from these carvings. So this is really want to get the word out about this. This really very little known ideas of monuments that are not so obvious, and there's several of these. So this is another similar boulder nearby. You've got similar carvings, and he's looked at these, and he can see evidence of differential weathering and of carving, and it's really fascinating site. So this is Gabriel Burns. You can download his entire book with many hundreds of these sites to explore if you're going to the Cavan Burren, which is not the Burren, it's Cavan, County Cavan. So again, that's in the book. So over to Scotland, the Isle of Arran, and this is a site called Orkney, which is really unusual site because it's halfway between a stone circle and a tomb, because you've got a stone circle around the outside, but it's a mound. So trying to categorise these things is always fraught with trouble. And sticking with the Isle of Arran, Mackreamer, of course, beautiful photo of a beautiful site. I'm sure many of you have been. And then you can get your drone going and look at the lupin stains. This is Dumfries and Galloway, so it's quite close by to, or on the way to Arran. And the girdle stains, which are quite similar, quite nearby. So staying with Scotland, a quick look at Fort Tveit, which is another really little known site. And of course there's nothing now to see there because it is a timber structure, and it's been excavated in great detail by Kenneth Brophy and his colleagues over many years, and they found this enormous henge and palisaded enclosure. So if you look at these, look at this. This is 100 metres there, so it's 200 metres across. You can fit 5 football fields in this thing. You can't see it anymore, but I've given that idea of these posts here. So this is what they found, these gigantic post holes, similar to some of the ones around Stonehenge. And this is an artist's impression of what this would have looked like. So Fort Tveit palisaded enclosure. So look at the size of that. These gigantic posts with people gathering and having trading axes and having ceremonies and festivals and you name it. But it's a really fascinating site. There's nothing to be seen of it on the ground at all anymore. And while they were excavating up there, they've also found a kist burial, which is Bronze Age as opposed to, so it's a little bit more recent. But this is a gigantic stone. And they reckoned there must be something underneath this, and they were a little bit apprehensive as to who might be under there, because who would you cover with a stone like that? So they eventually got a crane and took this stone off. And as I say, you have a kist burial with a slab lined, flat slabs lining this burial. And no bodies, sadly, because it's in acidic soil where the body would have, has disintegrated over time. But they still found quite a lot of significant things in here. So there's quartz covering, covering, and also brushwood. And they found a little pouch, the remains of a little pouch with a flint. It was a bronze knife. A bronze dagger actually, and a flint and a dagger and an iron pyrites. And what it seems like this would have been used for is for striking a light, for doing fire lighting. And someone was carrying that around in a little bag. And the other thing they found was meadowsweet flowers, which I'm sure many of you know have medicinal properties similar to aspirin. So you've got someone who's got ability to light fire, and they've got meadowsweet. So we're really learning an awful lot about people who built these monuments. Now I'm really going from thing to thing. So this is talking about shadow casting. Now, as I say, I've been doing this many years, and I've come across several different people with ideas around shadow casting. Now, the first one is a chap called Daniel Brown, who's University of Nottingham, and he's done a lot of research around Gardham's Edge, which is a Derbyshire stone. It's up on Gardham's Edge, and there's a lot of there's rock art, and there's Neolithic houses, and there's this very unusual standing stone, which is quite unlike any other stone I can think of, really. And it does really shout out to being a sundial in shape. And he's looked at the way the shadow goes round this, and the shadow effects you get from different times of day. And as I say, he's come up with some really interesting ideas around shadow casting, and that this was this is what this stone would have been set up for. And Terence Meaden, as I have mentioned earlier, has been looking at shadows around Drombeg. He's contributed a bit to the book as well. And he's been looking up in Aberdeenshire with different shaped stones and different carvings on stones. And again, There's also a shadow effect up at Long Meg and her daughters, the Long Meg being the one over there, and it's, or is it midsummer? It's midsummer. You get the midwinter sunset, I think. You get the shadow casts right across the stone. I have to get back to where I was in my notes. It is the midwinter sunset. There we are. So yes, as the sun goes down, you get this extraordinary shadow effect with Long Meg across the stone circle. So lots of people researching shadow effects. And of course, quick look at Orkney. Many sites in the centre, Ring of Brodgar, Maze How, etc. Ness of Brodgar. This is a great big excavation. I'm sure you know about a lot of things discovered up there. And again, tombs with separate burial slots for disarticulated bones. And again, Tomb of the Eagles. This is where these skulls were found, and of course the eagle talons. So, significant sort of talismans and tribal totems and such like. But these sites really seem to be things that people interacted with rather than just putting their dead in and forgetting about them. So just moving south again on the Ridgeway and similar ancient tracks. People go on about these ancient trackways and ridgeways and such like. Well, what's been found over the last 20 years with all the archaeology from all the modern developments and such like is that you get Neolithic and Bronze Age sites all over the country, all over the lowlands as well. So by the Bronze Age, really, the area was clear. So these ideas of going through on the Ridgeway because there were too many wolves and scary things in the valleys doesn't seem to be the case, because by the Bronze Age people had cleared the vast majority of the land and were living everywhere really. But ridgeways have persisted just because they last longer and they're more obvious. But people were traversing all over, doing, as I say, trading and axes and such like. So I'm not going to talk about Stonehenge because I'll leave that to Julian. I need to get to my little button somewhere. There we are. Play. And this is Google Earth. I've put Meg sites from the Megalithic portal on there, and we're going to go over to Yorkshire, and you'll see as we come down. This is Yorkshire, all the sites you can see, and it just makes a nice introduction to Thornborough Henges. So you've got the triple henges there, and the really interesting alignment. And there's also a cursus here. This is showing the cursus as well. Is that going to go? Play. Okay. This is we transferred this to Hugh's laptop, so this hasn't been tested. But we're back. Okay, so this is looking at in Google Earth. You can fly around these things, and you get the little yellow man from also on Google Maps, and you drop that down on, and you get to the Google Street View. Now we've got many hundreds of these plotted out on the Megalithic portal, where you can zoom around the street view looking at prehistoric monuments. And this is Thornborough, of course. This is the central henge, and you have a look at the banks, giant things. And as we zoom out, we're going to go over to the northern henge, so you get a really good view of the whole area. And this is very well preserved because it's in woodland, but it's not very easy to get to. But there's a quick look at Thornborough North. But finish off with a look at a bit of archeoastronomy. But Thornborough Henge is really a fascinating site. Of course, the three henges you can see in the middle, but you might not know that the oldest site at Thornborough is actually this triple-ditched round barrow, and even more strangely this is not a Bronze Age round barrow, this is a Neolithic round barrow, and it's got, as the name would suggest, it's got three ditches, And it's a very significant thing because it was built there before the whole of the rest of Thornborough. I'm trying to find the date, but I think it's for 3700 BC for that, and then people came along and built the henges and built the cursus and did these various alignments, and then Bronze Age people came along with all these barrows, so they were respecting the site. And also this barrow, interestingly, no one has added an extra. Often in the Bronze Age, people added extra burials sort of in the side, and this has been left alone. So I think this was a very significant site. So you can see the alignments here, and we showed the banks. I mean, in the night, if you're at Thornborough, then the banks are really focusing your view up towards the heavens because they're so significant. And over the winter time, I think it's probably needs to be can't be stated enough how important the night time and experience is at night, and experience of the heavens, because this was half of the day after all, and you really couldn't miss it. And of course the skies were much darker than they are now. And in the wintertime, the nights draw in. So people were really, I think the significance of the sky, as I say, can't be underestimated. And so that this is some different things that have, there's a lot of archeoastronomy which has been done in terms of making a model of this site and then overlaying it with at particular times of winding the date back and looking at alignments, and you get a lot, as well as the midwinter solstice setting over through these henge banks. You get various stars being aligned at a particular time. And we move on to Tom Navery, which is at Aberdeenshire, and again a recumbent stone circle, of course, with the recumbent stones and the two flankers. And you've got the rest of the stone circle going round towards the back of the picture. And again, Liz Henty has looked at modelling, has modelled this, and this is in a programme called Stellarium, which you can, again, do yourself if you're interested in such things. You can wind the date and set the various things to look at the alignments, and overlaying the actual site there, you can see that as the nights drew on, the effect you get is that these sites, the stars, are setting along this along the recumbent stone. So at particular times of year, this is more pronounced, particularly at the winter solstice. But you get the white stars here setting over the recumbent stone. And the other significant thing that Liz is suggesting is that you've got red stones over to the side here, and you've got the grey-white stones here. And what you get is that the red stars you see there going down over to this area, sort of lining up with the red stones, and the white stars lining up with the white stones. And you also get the moon. I mean, the moon's well known to be connected with these, so you get the moon rolling along, the high new moon rolling along there, and you really, this is the next best thing to TV if you're a Stone Age person, to look at the sky and have it and set up these alignments. And I think this has to have been one of the things they were looking to do with these remarkable monuments. So, what can I say? This is looking at all aspects of the stones, and really taking them in and experiencing them in as many different ways as possible. So it's been a very quick whiz through, so I hope you kept up with that. Apologies if I went too fast. Thank you for listening.